Resident Evil. This premier PlayStation series defined survival horror, introducing us to a world filled with zombies, slow door-opening animations, and boulder punching. It's been 25 years since the release of the original Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1, and in the years since, the game's storyline has become pretty messy. It's completely ridiculous. I mean this as a huge fan of the series and with a lot of love in my heart, but Resident Evil is the Kingdom Hearts of horror games. Its lore is long, arduous, and it absolutely rules. With the release of Resident Evil Village, you may be looking for a refresher on the story of Resident Evil so far. Or maybe you've never played a Resident Evil game before, and you're just like, what's a nemesis? A nemesis is this handsome lad. Would you look at that smile? Well, don't worry, because I'm here to give you a full recap of the entire Resident Evil saga. Sort of. Not everything, but the important bits, maybe. I'm going to give you what I think is all the information you'll need before playing Resident Evil Village. Now, before I begin, a small caveat. I'll only be covering games that are considered core titles in the central Resident Evil storyline. That means I won't be covering the storylines of canonical spin-off titles like Revelations or Outbreak, and I absolutely will be going nowhere near Operation Raccoon City for like 50 different reasons. Pretty sure you can kill Leon in that game. There was a period in the early 2010s when it was very difficult to be a Resident Evil fan. Basically, if you're here for a recap that includes the likes of Resident Evil Gaiden, where Leon S. Kennedy is on a boat or whatever, you've clicked on the wrong video, sorry. With that out of the way, hi, I'm Liam from Pushsquare. I love Resident Evil to the point where I have a bit of a problem, and this is our full story recap for Resident Evil. Okay, let's make a start, and what better place to start than the dawn of Earth itself? I am not kidding. Among the goop of ancient Earth lies the progenitor virus, which is, in Resident Evil lore, responsible for the existence of all life on Earth. Yeah, we're going in deep for this one. Not only is the progenitor virus the origin of life itself, but it also possesses the ability to mix genes together into mutations, alongside being capable of passing on said mutations to other hosts. Oh, also at the same time, a parasite springs into existence. This parasite, which will eventually come to be known as Las Plagas, infects non-botanical life forms, taking over their mind and body before mutating them into massive monsters. It's believed its mutating properties are the result of exposure to the progenitor virus. Basically, both of these little buggers are responsible for, well, everything. Making a small time jump, thousands of years into the future, I'm here to introduce you to three horrible men. Oswell E. Spencer, James Marcus, and Edward Ashford are three virologists, terrible people, and also sort of responsible for everything that happens in all of these games. In 1966, the three men learn of the existence of a rare flower located in West Africa, known locally as the Stairway to the Sun. From it, they are able to extract the progenitor virus and bring the samples back to America, establishing Umbrella Pharmaceuticals as a cover for their research. 1 year later, construction of the Spencer Mansion is completed within the Arklay Mountains, just outside of Raccoon City. Designed by architect George Trevor, the Spencer Mansion is chock full of secret passageways and doors that can only be opened by putting gems into statues because its owner, Oswell E. Spencer, is just the absolute worst. Seemingly just to reinforce how evil he is, Spencer invites the architect and his family over for dinner, only to kidnap both Trevor's wife and his young daughter before injecting them with the recently discovered progenitor virus, seemingly just just for a laugh. Jessica, Trevor's wife, dies to the virus, but his daughter Lisa mutates and is held hostage by Spencer for 20 years. Lovely, just a real bad dude. In 1968, work begins on the Umbrella training facility, located near the Spencer mansion in the Arklay Mountains. Spencer makes Marcus the lead research, but Marcus's growing paranoia towards his colleague results in a plan to overthrow Umbrella and anoint himself is the new leader. Around the same time, a number of children are stolen as part of a eugenics project to create a group of superhumans. The children are infected with the progenitor virus, which Spencer believes will enhance their abilities if they have the right DNA. These children, all given the moniker Wesker, are kept within the Umbrella training facility and given a world-class education. One young man, Albert, is among this group of children. Following the death of his father, Alexander Ashford replaces him as one of the key members of Umbrella and begins work on a big base in Antarctica with the aim of creating a clone based on his great-great-grandmother. His plan is to make the clone the head of the Ashford family and prevent Spencer from taking control of Umbrella, a perfectly normal thing to do. He calls this project Code Veronica and just kind of stays up there doing his own thing. A few years later, Code Veronica is a success, and the result is twin clones, Alfred and Alexia. In 1978, child prodigies Albert Wesker, one of the children from Spencer's Super Children's Summer Camp, and William Birkin are hired by Umbrella and begin working under Marcus at the training facility. Marcus develops the T-virus by combining the progenitor virus with leech DNA. The T-virus is intended to be a bioweapon so deadly it makes traditional armed forces completely redundant. The virus has a high mortality rate, but also has a slight side effect where it sometimes turns the host into a mindless mutant with a craving for human flesh. Years later, Wesker and Birkin will improve the T-virus by splicing it with Ebola RNA, lowering the mortality rate and increasing the chances of zombification. Shortly after, Spencer closes the training facility, moving Birkin, Wesker and the T-virus to a lab under his ridiculous mansion and leaving Marcus to fester alone in the now abandoned facility. Meanwhile, in Antarctica, the Ashford twins discover their clones and decide it's time to kill their dad. Child genius Alexia develops a new strain of the progenitor virus codenamed the T-Veronica virus. She immediately stabs her dad with it, turning him into a monster known as Nosferatu. 1 year later, Alexia stabs herself with the T-Veronica virus for reasons, and then goes to sleep for 15 years. Wesker, meanwhile, under orders from Spencer, kills James Marcus and steals his research. Thankfully, Marcus has spent all his years in isolation experimenting on leeches, resulting in the creation of the Queen Leech, which crawls into Marcus's body, resurrecting him as a creepy sinning leech man. Back at the Spencer mansion, Lisa is still alive and mutating rapidly. Whilst experimenting on her, Birkin discovers the G-virus, a mutated form of the T-virus that makes its host grow loads of tentacles and big eyes and stuff. Spencer thinks this whole G-virus business is really cool and tasks Birkin with researching the variant strain in a new facility known as the Nest, buried deep beneath Raccoon City. Albert Wesker, on the other hand, leaves the Umbrella Corporation and joins the army, getting freaky with a woman in Eastern Europe before losing interest in going back to the States. I'm sure this won't be a relevant plot point to a bad game later on. A few years later, Wesker grows bored of the army and returns home to Raccoon City. He is swiftly appointed as the head of a new division of the Raccoon City Police Department known as STARS. This brings us to 1998 and the events of the first chronological Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 0. The RPD dispatches STAR's Bravo team to investigate a string of grisly murders that have occurred within the Arklay Mountains. Rebecca Chambers, a member of the STAR's unit, becomes trapped in the forest after her helicopter crashes under mysterious Nah, Wesker did it. Yeah, Wesker totally did it. And that's going to become a very common theme moving forward.
After teaming up with escaped convict Billy Cohen and killing zombies on a train for a bit, the duo discover the now abandoned Umbrella training facility where Marcus had continued his leech research following its closure by Spencer years prior. Marcus is very much alive but is also a sinning leechman as mentioned earlier and has sworn revenge against Spencer and the Umbrella Corporation. His leeches are the ones responsible for causing a massive viral leak within the lab underneath the Spencer mansion, and the T-virus infected dogs that have escaped are the cause of the recent string of horrible murders. Chambers and Cohen kill Marcus before Wesker and Birkin blow up the mansion in order to contain the virus. One day later, STAR's Alpha Team are dispatched to the Arclay Mountains to search for Bravo Team, which brings us to the plot of the original Resident Evil. Wesker, who is super evil at this point if you haven't already guessed, is given orders to sacrifice the team to provide combat data for Umbrella before containing the viral leak like he did the day before. Alpha Team consists of Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, Brad Vickers and Albert Wesker. Hunted by zombie dogs, Chris, Jill, Barry and Wesker find themselves within the Spencer mansion. Filled with zombies and other nightmarish creatures, Jill and Chris set about attempting to escape from this house that is 90% puzzles and how did anyone ever live here? Eventually, Chris, or Jill depending on who you're playing as, finds Rebecca, who is wound up in the Spencer mansion following the destruction of the training facility she was in one day prior. She informs the team that Wesker is like a straight up terrible dude, and that the team needs to stop him before he causes any more zombie related problems. After finding Wesker in an underground lab, he injects himself with the T-virus before unleashing the Tyrant, a sentient monster developed by Birkin. Thankfully, like every other monster in this universe, the Tyrant is swiftly dispatched with a rocket launcher and the gang all escape. Before escaping himself, Wesker runs into the now freed Lisa, killing her before the mansion explodes. Poor Lisa. Jill, Chris and Rebecca go rogue following the events of the Spencer mansion, vowing to hold Umbrella accountable for literally being the most evil bunch of people on the planet. Chris heads to Europe while Jill stays in Raccoon City. Back in the city, William Birkin decides to betray Umbrella and sell his G-virus to the highest bidder. Umbrella swiftly attempts to kill Birkin for his insubordination, but Birkin is able to inject himself with the G-virus before he dies, which mutates him into a horrible monster with a big eye and its massive awful arm. Birkin kills the mercs who are sent to assassinate him, who in turn drop a case filled with T-virus into a sewer. The virus, which is now present in the city's water supply, begins to infect the populace of Raccoon City. Thus begins the plot of Resident Evil 3. Jill Valentine attempts to escape the now zombie-riddled Raccoon City, but is ambushed by Nemesis, a BOW deployed by Umbrella to kill any remaining STARS units left in the city. After meeting with a member of the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service, Carlos Oliveira, Nemesis infects Jill with the T-virus, knocking her unconscious. As Jill is incapacitated by the effects of the T-virus, rookie cop Leon S. Kennedy is on his way to Raccoon City for what can only be described as the worst first day on the job in history. Stopping at a gas station, Leon runs into university student Claire Redfield, younger sister of Chris Redfield from the original game. Together they venture into Raccoon City, only to find it overrun with flesh-eating zombies. Separated by an exploding gas tanker, the two go their separate ways through the burning city. After surviving the decimated Raccoon City Police Department, Claire rescues Sherry Birkin, daughter of Umbrella scientist and all-round bad dad William Birkin, from the clutches of Police Chief Irons. Meanwhile, after also surviving the horrors of the Raccoon City Police Department, he encounters Ada 1, an FBI agent looking to find evidence of Umbrella's shady doings.
Have you seen this? Like, do you not think any of this would hold up in a court of law? No, just the virus sample? Okay.
While exploring the sewers, they come across Annette Birkin, William's wife and Sherry's terrible mother. Sherry has awful parents. While Leon and Ada follow Annette into Umbrella's underground research lab nest, Birkin infects his own daughter because he really is just an absolute garbage father. On the hunt for a cure, Claire also ends up in Nest. The pair kill a now monstrously mutated William, but not before he mortally wounds his own wife. Just an all-round bad bloke. Surprise, Ada is actually a mercenary working for a third party and is here to steal a sample of the G-virus. She betrays Leon, but as soon as she gets her hands on the sample, Annette shoots her and Ada tumbles to her death. Claire gives the vaccine to Annette, who cures Sherry and then dies because being stabbed in the chest by your big mutant husband is like super fatal. Claire, Leon and Sherry escape the facility by train, killing another tyrant with a rocket launcher before they leave because this is a Resident Evil game, and vow to end Umbrella because, like I just said, this is a Resident Evil game. Meanwhile, Jill is cured by Carlos, only to discover that the US government is planning to solve the Raccoon City crisis by nuking the entire city. Jill kills Nemesis and her and Carlos escape by helicopter, seconds before the nuclear bomb obliterates Raccoon City completely. A mere 3 months after the events of Raccoon City, Claire Redfield travels to an Umbrella research facility in Paris to search for her missing brother Chris, beginning the events of Resident Evil Code Veronica. There, she's captured by Umbrella security forces and transported to an Umbrella training facility on Rockford Island. The facility is overseen by Alfred Ashford, one of the Ashford clones. Alfred is a dappy dresser, sometimes thinks he's his own sister, and is kind of a bad dude. Claire is freed during an airstrike, which causes a zombie outbreak on the island, because of course it does, before managing to escape by plane. But oh no, Alfred takes control of the plane and directs it to yet another Umbrella base in Antarctica, the one originally established by his father, Alexander. Alfred follows but is fatally wounded by Claire's companion, Steve Burnside, who has great early 2000s hair, and falls down a big hole. Before he dies, he releases his sister Alexia from her 15-year-long hibernation. Meanwhile, back on Rockford Island, Chris Redfield turns up looking for Claire, presumably because he didn't have enough credit on his 1998 Nokia to drop her a text just asking where she is. While exploring the island, Chris bumps into none other than Albert Wesker, who is A, still alive, B, absolutely riddled with T-virus, making him basically immortal, and C, now working for a rival company known as HCF and looking for a sample of the T Veronica virus that Alexia infected herself with 15 years prior. Chris travels to Antarctica where he reunites with Claire, then Wesker shows up and just this happens for some reason.
You're coming with me.
Chris and Claire take down a severely mutated Alexia with a rocket launcher, because of course they do, before escaping the island as it self-destructs, because of course they do.
I'm sorry, Claire, but it's not over yet. There's still something we've got to do.
You mean...
Yeah, it's payback time. We've got to destroy Umbrella.
Wesker, who is basically just a god with weird cat eyes at this point, survives the blast and lives to be a massive evil bastard for another day.
Next up, we have the events of the best game in the series, arguably the best game ever made, the events of Resident Evil 4. Teeny weeny little problem. Leon's jaunt to Spain is kind of inconsequential.
The year is 2004 and Umbrella is no more. Dismantled because they're completely evil and they killed loads of innocent people. Now working as a federal agent, Leon S. Kennedy travels to a remote Spanish village in order to save the president's daughter, Ashley Graham, who has been kidnapped by a cultist group led by the mysterious Osmond Sadler, a perfectly normal thing that happens all the time. It turns out that the residents of the village have been infected by a parasite known as Las Plagas, which turns their hosts into merciless killing machines stuffed with juicy tentacles.
Leon has the best time sightseeing around this village. He sees all of the points of interest. Policemen burning on a bonfire, this giant troll man, this chainsaw man who is a doctor, this is a man with a doctorate, he is a trained medical professional or a professor of literature, maybe. This giant statue of a tiny, immortal, well-dressed boy, man, thing that chases you through a castle. Because maybe this series has always been silly.
Leon finds Ashley, only to discover the cult has infected her with Las Plagas. Their plan is to send her back to the United States, wait for the Plagas to burst out of her body, and kill the president. Something Leon is perfectly capable of doing all on his own, thank you very much, but we'll get to that a bit later. After losing Ashley, something that happens so often in this game, Leon bumps into none other than Ada 1, who's still alive and working for none other than Albert Wesker. She's here to retrieve a sample of Las Plagas for Wesker. Wesker is now secretly working for two organisations, both the HCF and Tricell, who are looking to use the Plagas in their own BOW research projects. Leon safely removes the Plagas from Ashley's body, kills the now horrifically mutated Saddler with a rocket launcher before escaping the exploding facility on a jet ski. God, this game is just the best. Ada, having a change of heart, vows to never hand over a sample of the parasite to Wesker, but Wesker just finds a sample of his own. So, thanks Ada. I guess the thought was there. 2 years later, Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine are now working for the newly founded Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, an organisation created to investigate and prevent BOW incidents that have occurred since the fall of Umbrella. Together, they travel to the Spencer estate in Europe to track down Oswell Spencer, one of the founders of Umbrella, who has been on the run from authorities due to him being super responsible for all the zombie stuff that keeps happening. However, the pair discover that Spencer has been killed by none other than Albert Wesker, who not only has a newfound love for wearing nothing but leather, but is also more powerful than he was when Chris last encountered him during the events of Code Veronica. After a frantic battle, Jill sacrifices herself to save Chris by pulling Wesker out of a window, killing both of them in the process.
Psst, spoilers. This is Resident Evil, so they're not dead, like at all. They're super fine.
2 years later, Chris Redfield is assigned on a mission to Africa to arrest Ricardo Irving, a black market dealer selling BOWs to terrorist organisations around the world. Alongside his new partner, Sheva Alomar, the pair quickly discover that the local residents are infected with the same Las Plagas parasite that Leon encountered back in Spain. After dispatching Irving, who, guess what, turned into a big tentacle monster, Chris and Sheva bump into Albert Wesker, now working with Tricell and responsible for the local parasitic outbreak. Tricell have set up a facility in the series of caves where the Umbrella founders first retrieved the Stairway to the Sunflower, the plant containing the progenitor virus, and since the fall of Umbrella have continued their research into BOWs and viruses. Wesker, who isn't best pleased to see his old pal Chris sniffing around his evil lair, dispatches none other than Jill Valentine to kill both him and Sheva. Not only is Jill alive, she's now under Wesker's control thanks to a mind control stone that's stuck in her chest.
Hi, I'm going to just repeat that in case you missed it. She has a mind control stone stuck in her chest. The viruses I can get on board with, but a mind control stone? A mind control stone?
Chris saves Jill by removing the device before pursuing Wesker, who is planning to launch missiles containing a parasitic virus known as Ouroboros into the Earth's atmosphere, infecting the majority of the world's population and transforming those with receptive DNA like himself into superhuman beings. Chris and Sheva prevent Wesker from launching the missiles by bringing down his plane into the middle of a volcano. Wesker injects himself with Ouroboros, turning himself into a big tentacle monster, and Chris punches a boulder for a bit because by this point the series has just completely gone off the rails. Escaping by helicopter, Chris finally kills Wesker by blowing his head off with a rocket launcher, a fitting end for one of the series' best characters.
Big if on whether or not he's actually dead there. We'll circle back to this later on. Okay, we've now reached Resident Evil 6. This is the biggest game in the entire franchise. It's huge. There's like 4 campaigns to play in this if you include the bonus Ada DLC stuff. As a co-op game, Resident Evil 6 is okay. Like, it's not too bad. It's a fun, action-focused romp that's just absolutely dumb as hell. But yeah, nothing really happens in this that's worth mentioning. It's kind of just ridiculous, so Yeah.
In 2012, federal agent Sherry Birkin, a survivor of the Raccoon City incident and daughter to Umbrella scientist William Birkin, travels to Edonia to rescue Jake Muller. Muller is the only person with antibodies that can stop the newly unleashed C-virus, which is being created by an organisation dubbed Neo Umbrella. Why does Muller have powerful antibodies? Because he's Wesker's son. Obviously.
1 year later, Leon S. Kennedy shoots the President of the United States in the head with a gun because he's a zombie. That bit's pretty cool, actually.
After the president decides it's time the world learns about the Raccoon City incident, Neo Umbrella launches a biochemical attack on the White House to prevent the truth from being released, infecting the president and forcing Leon to pop a little bullet in his soft, rotting head. Ada turns up, because of course she does, and tells Leon that a national security advisor named Derek Simmons is responsible for the attack. At the same time, Chris Redfield is racked with PTSD after his team is wiped out by, wait for it, Ada! What a twist. So in pursuit of various goals, Chris, Leon, Sherry and Jake all travel to China. There are other characters in this game, but honestly they're so inconsequential I'm not even going to bother telling you their names. With the gang all in China, Chris bumps into Jake and lets him know about that time he punched a boulder and shot a rocket into Jake's dad's face, which Jake is kind of cool with, all things considered. It turns out Bad Ada is a clone working for Neo Umbrella. Good Ada shows up and prevents herself from being cloned again. Jake's DNA saves the world. And that's kind of everything worth mentioning from this game.
Yeah, this game is pretty rough.
In 2014, a new organisation known as The Connections uses research obtained by HCF to create the mould, a progenitor-enhanced fungus that is capable of mind control. They graft the mould onto a human embryo, creating a bioweapon known as Evelyn. Evelyn is artificially aged and given the appearance of a 10-year-old girl to aid her in infiltrating enemy territories. When transporting her, Evelyn loses control and infects everyone on board the ship with the mould, including secret agent Mia Winters. The boat is shipwrecked, and both Evelyn and Mia are taken in by the Baker family. The kind-hearted Bakers believe Evelyn to be nothing more than a lost 10-year-old girl. After craving nothing more than a normal childhood, Evelyn infects the Bakers, twisting them into bloodthirsty cannibals using her mind control powers.
Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me for this bit because it kind of breaks the rules I said at the beginning of the video, but I feel compelled to mention it. In 2015's Resident Evil Umbrella Corps, I know, once you complete some missions, you can hear Albert Wesker saying something like, "Well done." Now, very few people have ever finished this game because it's absolute trash, but Capcom were like super insistent before this game out that it was canonical to the mainline Resident Evil series. So if the only story element in the whole game implies that Wesker is still alive and observing these Umbrella Corps, whatever they are, soldiers for the organization, I think, that feels worth mentioning in case he turns up in a game further down the line. But I mean, at the same time, Capcom probably want to forget about this. So take this bit with a pinch of salt.
In 2017, Ethan Winters travels to Louisiana searching for his missing wife, Mia. After discovering what he believes to be an abandoned farmhouse, he's attacked by an infected Mia and kidnapped by the Baker family, who relentlessly pursue him throughout their dilapidated home. Ethan is able to defeat the Bakers thanks to the help of Zoe, the one member of the Baker family who has not yet succumbed to Evelyn's influence. Ethan saves Mia with a vaccine, sorry Zoe, before fighting Evelyn herself, who is not only aged into the silent grandmother that has been present throughout the entire game, but is also capable of turning into a giant tentacle monster because of course she can. After defeating her, Ethan and Mia are saved by none other than Chris Redfield, who is now working for a company known as Blue Umbrella, an organisation established to right the wrongs of the original company. After the Winters are taken to safety, Chris hunts down the last remaining Baker, Lucas, in a series of underground tunnels. Lucas had been working for the Connections, observing his family and providing research data to them. With Lucas dispatched, Chris returns back to base.
And that is it. That is the entire story of Resident Evil so far. It's long, it's messy, But what other franchise has a bit where a guy punches a boulder so he can shoot his ex-boss in the head with a rocket launcher because he's turned into a massive tentacle man? The answer is none, and that's why I love this series with all of my heart. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very, very fun to make. If you did enjoy it, please do consider giving this video a like and leave a comment telling me all about your favourite moments from this beautiful, wonderful, silly Japanese survival horror series. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.